Welcome back, guys. I'm going to kind of try to just go off the cuff here. My topic is the dark and the light. I want to start by defining darkness. Darkness is hate, hurt, rejection, lack of immorality, and perverse behaviors. To judge, stand in accusation, betray, or wrongfully accuse. So now I'm going to show you guys some examples of the dark that I've encountered in my life. So I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about dreams that I had. The very first dream that I remember from when I was a little girl, I had to have been maybe 3. And my brother and sister had a different biological father, so they would go see him, and I would stay at home with my mom and dad, unless my dad was out trucking. And at this time, he actually was not home. It was just my mom, I remember. But how our beds were situated, I had to actually get out of my bed to go to the door and get out of the room. I had to walk by my sister's bed. Well, this particular night, I happened to wake up, and I remember it as clear as day that there was a woman with dark black hair sitting Indian style on my sister's bed. And all I can remember, now this is a child's mind, all I can remember is trying to get as close to the wall as on the opposite side of the bed to get around. And all I could say was, nice switch, nice switch, nice switch. So even in my toddler years, I knew that what I was seeing was not good. It wasn't light, that it was darkness, because it scared the crap out of me. I ran in my mom's room, got into the bed with her. She's like, "What's the matter?" And I tried to tell her there was somebody in the bedroom. She got up, looked, came back, and there's nobody in there. Tarina, let's go back to sleep. So that was my first memory of darkness. Later on in life, I was at a friend's house. We had helped this friend move from their previous residence to a new place. And I remember going over there to visit and them saying, we have a ghost. And I remember at the house that they lived at before that they had always talked about a ghost. I'll tell you what I think about ghosts in just a second. But she said, no, we have a ghost, and I believe it's followed us. And she said that her son, she had 2 twins, a boy and a girl. She said that her son couldn't sleep. He would cry. The minute that they would put him in the room and walk away, he would start to cry. Whereas when they moved into this house, they separated the twins. So the little girl, she was in another room, and she would exhibit talking to the corners. And so Julie, my friend, had wanted to know, how or why it had come back. So I decided to help her get the boy in the bed. The daughter had fallen asleep. We laid her down. Her son had fallen asleep. We were walking, and I was actually opening the door for her. She was carrying him, and she walked over to his bed, laid him down, and from behind me, I had walked just into the room. To my right behind me was the closet. And all of a sudden, closet doors rattle, 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 rattle. Man, I jumped out of that room. I was like, yeah, you have a ghost. Now, in this day and age, I don't believe that there are ghosts. Do I believe that there are spirits that can communicate with us? Oh, definitely. There's a whole construct of spirit. Good spirits, bad spirits. That's why I'm showing you right now that this darkness is also a spirit. And it can come in, lots of different shapes and sizes. Okay, so then the next one that I remember was I was not living a Christian life. I was living a secular life. I was in my early 20s. And I was going through some serious things in my life. My marriage was on the rocks. My daughter and had gone to stay with her dad. It was a real dark time, and I remember having a nightmare. And I'll never forget it. I had had this nightmare a few times in my life, different variations, but this last time, I'll never forget. I was in my childhood bedroom, and I had my son and my daughter in the room with me, and I was trying to keep us all away from the window. And as I put the children down and I looked up the window, the blinds opened, and there was a man or a figure. My window was probably 6 feet off the ground, at least, if not more. But I saw this dark figure, cloaked, black trench coat, black hat, no face, just dark. And it had elevated outside my window and was staring in at me and my kids. I had just started to think about turning to God at that point because my life was, in such shambles that I really needed some help. And then I remember having another nightmare during this same time where I couldn't turn the lights on. I was in a house and I couldn't see, but I knew I needed to turn the lights on. And every light switch that I went to, every lamp that I went to, turn it on, nothing. There was no light at all. So that was some instances of my darkness. I've also, in some of those times, when the no lights and things like that, I even could smell demons. I couldn't figure out what the smell was. I had my son, it was middle of winter, and put him in the car, and we get out and we're driving, and I cannot get rid of this awful smell. It smelled like rotting flesh. So I remember rolling down the windows. I mean, we're talking, 30 degrees outside, and I got all the windows in the car down because I can't get rid of the stench. I remember that evening I had went back to the apartment that I was in, and I scrubbed all the walls with bleach. So my whole house smelled like bleach. And I had, in my darkness, called my sister, who was a born-again Christian at the time, and she talked to some people at her church, and the next day they came and prayed over my house and all of these kind of things. So a little did I know then, they knew, the Spirit knew what was coming down the pike, and I didn't understand all that until now, which that's a totally another subject for a totally different day. But okay, so as I've showed you the darkness, I also want to give you guys some examples of the light, because it's wonderful, it's amazing, and when you accept it and you don't doubt, the peace is so profound. So we're gonna go in here. And these are examples of my experiences that are of the light. My husband was involved in a really bad car accident back in 1999. Suffered brain injury. I had 2 small children, and we had no car. A friend of mine had helped me buy this little rinky-dink car, and I was on the way to the hospital to go see my husband. And I'm driving down the freeway, I'm doing 60 miles an hour, and all of a sudden it just shut off. So I worked my way over to the side of the road, and I remember sitting there going, this was of course before cell phones and stuff, and I'm like, I don't know what to do here, and so I thought, okay, well, let's get out and walk. And as I'm walking, from behind me a car pulled over, and in front of me a car pulled over. And the gentleman in the first car said, can I give you a lift? And, at first I was kind of, you don't do that as a single woman. You don't just get in a car with somebody. But, I had a ways to go before I got to the hospital. So I said okay and got in. The other car pulled up, said you guys are good, and off they went. So those were my experiences of a couple angels trying to help me out. I actually ended up getting a ride all the way to the hospital in the very front doors, and the gentleman that I was with prayed for me. So like I said, angels, they come in all different shapes and sizes. And so I mentioned to you guys about the ghost, right? No, now, I believe, like I said, that we can see spirits, in our dreams, in our visions, just in our mind's eye. And I remember that this same dream came to me. My grandfather died at the time that the demons were prevalent in my life. And I'll never forget, it was the only time I saw him in a dream. And all of a sudden we were there and we were in his garden. And I loved him. I loved how he always planted pickling cucumbers. And I remember going up and I was like, Grandpa. And he was like, hey. And I was like, what are you doing? And he goes, I'm tending to the garden. He goes, and my cucumbers. And he held his hand out with his thumb in this specific way that only he did. And he said, they're about this long. And I remember being just like, oh, wow. I was just so happy. And I started to cry. And he said, how are you? And I remember looking at him and saying, I'm good now. And in that moment and in that dream, I actually got to feel the peace and the light in the time of darkness. So light can come, like I said, all different shapes and sizes. There's a lot of things that have happened in my life that, I could tell you stories about. I have a special needs son. He's an adult now. I have taken care of him before he turned 18, and then of course I became his caregiver after he turned 18. He has blessed my life. He has taught me how to be a better person. My daughter as well. So there are a lot of things in life that we can recognize as the light. So I challenge you to only find those things and only comment on those things in a day, and watch how the peace can come onto you. And when you first realize it is so, like I said, so profound. I have not been quiet in a long time. And that was where God was bringing me to. He wanted me to go back to be that gentle and kind spirit. So, there's darkness, there's light. Jesus loves you. He wants you to be aware of what's out there. He wants you to know what can come against you so that you have the skills to fight these things. But, he loves you. He wants only the best for you. And I love you too. And I hope you all have a wonderful day. And we'll talk again soon. God bless you all. Like, subscribe, comment. Bye.